Aren't we going executive? Yeah, I think so. He's actually. Maybe I get some votes. Yeah. They say moving on up. It's kind of slow. How are you? Nice to see you. Expressed your kind words the last time I was here. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, they get that was asked.
Oh, yeah. God. History.
Are we missing anybody? No. Okay. Everyone ready? You ready?
My, what a
They'll
nice,
always bring 2 minutes early.
what a nice cane you have now.
Well, thank you. Go back. Before I fade.
Ola. Your new nickname now is Ola.
Is Olaf.
Not Olaf, Ola. Stanley's right?
We will. Yeah, they're in the back.
Got a little sand in her Fitbit.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Would everyone please stand for a salute to our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Terry, notice of publication?
Yes, Mayor, take notice that this special meeting of the Mayor and Borough Council is being held in accordance with Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975.
Roll call.
Councilpersons Buchanan.
Here.
Grillo.
Here.
Kilpatrick. Here. Lembo. Melendez.
Here.
Novak.
Here.
Okay, in deference to our veterans that are here tonight and the police officers that have family at home, I'm going to put the public portion first. So with that, I'm going to open the public portion for questions or comments about tonight's special meeting. Are there questions or comments? Doug, if you would.
Can't respond.
Douglas Gumprick. I'm a member of Saraville PBA Local 98 and a current employee of the Borough of Saraville. Mayor, concerns that I have, I guess we'd say, is that when we've done hiring, maybe this will come out as the meeting goes through, but it's my understanding as we've always hired, sent lists back, called for new lists, and that's the procedure that we've always taken part of, okay? My concern now is that this is not going to be the practice, or maybe it will. I don't know if you guys will discuss that further in this meeting. But I'm also concerned as a veteran that we come here and that we're not trying to acknowledge anybody who at one time or another has made a commitment to this country and was unable to sit for a number of years. I believe that the list may have run its course, and I think that now that the people that were unable to sit for a test should be afforded the right to come before us and have an ability to be hired by the Borough of Saraville. I don't think we should be circumventing or bypassing any new list or the possibility of a new list that may arise out of this meeting here. And if we could address it as further, I'm not sure what action the mayor and council are here to take tonight, and if we can reserve the right to come back and address any further things that come out of this, I'd appreciate that as well.
Are you requesting a public portion when we're going to go into executive session?
Yes, sir.
So
I will
I
request a
can
public
arrange
portion
it
after.
to do a public portion when we come back out if.
Yes, sir. That's what
Okay,
I
I
would
will do
request.
that.
Thank you.
This is what I know. The list, we're about 40 down on the list. When we called for this list, I think 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we're about through 40 of the people from the top. Now, this list expires July 2nd, I believe, and I believe that the academy starts the very end of August. So it's virtually a full 2 months. That being said, that's the extent of what I know. We have a list that's we're down now to the 40 we're down 40. We've gone through 40 people from the top on the list. That is which list to choose is what's going to be discussed in closed session tonight.
Okay. Well, I request that we be able to reopen a public portion after we know what the outcome of your
I will do
executive
that.
session will be.
I will do that.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there other questions or comments? Anyone from the veterans wishing to make a comment? Stanley?
Stanley Droll, 121 Bezette Street. I'm here because I'm the service officer at the Veterans of Foreign Wars in Sayreville. And I was notified during the week on this meeting. I had no idea about this meeting until I got some information. And it may affect some members of our post and some fellow veterans. And I felt compelled to come up here, not only in that position, but having served as a councilman and also being a retired military officer. I can always take the attitude of I got mine and just sit back because I thought about it, because I know what it's like sometimes speaking out here. But I figured if I could serve in a combat area, I could probably stand up in Sayreville and say what I really believe. Again, I don't know anybody on the list. I don't want to know who's on there right now. I think it's cleaner this way. But my impression over the years was that we did hire off a list and then we sent for a new list. If we're already 40 in, it seemed to me as somebody who's done management, I would like to probably see a new list. I also did some research after I was contacted by several veterans, and there are several articles on this particular topic on the website. If you go on Star Ledger and some of the newspapers, how towns have tried to circumvent the veterans over the last 10 years particularly, because we've been fighting a war for 10 years. I moved back to Sayreville when I retired because Sayreville claims to be a veteran-friendly town. You know, we do a lot of things publicly, but in a case like that, I have a bad feel about this myself. I don't really know any details. Again, I'm kind of blind on it. But I just have a bad feel that we're trying to bypass the veterans because we don't know who's on it, but I can, again, bet that the first group is going to be veterans. And I did a little research on the veterans' preference, not only in New Jersey, but federally. It's not a handout. It's supposed to be recognition of not only service, but skills. People who have served in Afghanistan, Iraq, or any of the current wars have a lot of skills that you just can't grasp as a civilian. I personally trusted my life to young soldiers, and I'm still here. I think they make excellent police officers. I think the skills they have and the maturity is something we should want. And again, I'll leave it to you to discuss, but I wanted to say it up front that I think the average veteran like me smells something fishy in here. Again, I only got a hold of this about 3 days ago. I have no details. But I hope some of my fellow veterans will come up here and say more than just me. I just felt compelled to come up first to maybe set the stage. Because I don't think I could sleep at night if I didn't come up here and say something about it. Because, you know, again, I got mine. I'm a retired officer. I can always say I got mine and screw everybody else. And I hope some of the police officers who came here as veterans remember how you got here and have the think back to your oath you took when you were whatever service you're in, and remember why you're here. You know, it's easy to say you back your brother, but sometimes, I'll end it this. I want to speak later too, as the last gentleman. One of the best things I learned in the military was I had a sergeant major. We were sitting in a bunker once, and he said to me, you know, Colonel, he said, I don't know what it is. He says, I've seen guys run out in machine gun fire and not even think about it. But when they have to stand up in public and say something that's right, those same brave people will back off and not do it. I don't know what it is. So I asked my fellow vets to say something.
Usually it's humility.
Well, that's why I say we don't ask for much. We
You
just
don't.
want to be treated fairly.
Correct. Thank you, Stanley. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during this public portion? Anyone? Then I'm going to take a motion to close the public portion. We'll then go into executive session and then come back out, and I'll reopen the public portion. So a motion has been made and seconded. You need to read the,
Need a roll call.
to close the public portion. Roll call to close the public portion.
Councilpersons Buchanan?
Yes.
Grillo?
Yes.
Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Lembo? Yes. Melendez?
Yes.
Novak?
Yes.
Okay, before we go into executive, I did need to make a statement. There are two council people, Mary and Vicky, who, Mary, I think your son is on the current list, and Vicky, your brother. I need to have a ruling from council as to whether or not you can participate in this.
Kennedy, I already asked Mike after our ethics class 2 weeks ago, when was specifically said that as long as the child is not the dependent, it is not an ethical problem. And I asked Mike to confirm that, and he said I could vote on this.
Bob Clark, you concur with that?
I have to be honest with you, ethics is not my,
If you could turn your microphone on, Bob.
I don't really.
It's not on.
Push the button. Thank you.
There you go.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the ethics opinions with regard to that, so I really couldn't answer your question. I can answer questions on the other issues that were raised by the public, but not on the ethics
Okay.
rules.
Okay.
You said you spoke with Mr.
Absolutely.
Buchanan, and he indicated that there was none?
There was no
I'll
conflict.
confirm that.
Okay.
All right, then we'll
Un-
move forward.
So clearly, my brother is not a dependent of mine of any type, doesn't live in my house. I get nothing from my brother other than the love that a brother gives a sister. So I'm pretty sure that wouldn't have me in conflict at all.
Okay, that being said, I'll take a motion to go in executive session.
Do we, we're going to read it?
Before we do so, I need to read the resolution. Whereas Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, permits the exclusion from the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas this public body is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist. Now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the Borough of Saraville, County, Middlesex, State of New Jersey as follows. One, that the public portion of this meeting is hereby adjourned in order for the governing body to meet in a closed private session for approximately 30 minutes? 15 minutes?
No.
How long do we anticipate?
We have a couple items, I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll say 30 minutes. Or longer if necessary, to discuss the following matters, personnel and litigation. Two, following the conclusion of the closed session, the governing body shall reconvene in an open portion of this meeting to consider any and all other matters that may be properly brought before it at this time. Minutes of the meeting will be kept, and once the matter involving such confidentiality of the above has no longer requires the confidentiality, then the minutes will be made public. Now therefore be it is hereby resolved that the public is hereby excluded, and this resolution shall take effect immediately.
Mayor, I move the resolution be approved, and that we have our closed session in room 310.
Second.
Roll call?
Councilpersons Buchanan?
Yes.
Grillo?
Yes.
Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Lembo? Melendez?
Yes.
Novak?
Yes.
Okay, we'll be back in a bit.
Probably
Oh, my God. That's atrocious. Okay.
Motion to reconvene?
Is there a motion to go back into open?
So moved.
All in favor? Steve, did you second that motion to go back into open?
Somebody please second.
Yes, I
Okay.
did.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Is there a motion? Well, before we get to the motion, there was a straw vote of declaring 5 vacancies. So with that, before we take the vote, let me open the public portion again for questions or comments. It'll be, so that by declaring that there are 5 vacancies, there's only one list, which is the existing list. Anyone wishing to make a comment, please come up. This is the public portion. This is the time you would do so.
Doug Umprick, Cerebral PBA Local 98. Mayor, if I could, you said you had a straw vote, but before we do that, I know it was brought up, and maybe the attorney can explain better if you have a definitive answer on the ethics aspect of who can vote on what topics. In Franklin Borough, I think it was posted in 2016 NJ.com, where there was a council person in Franklin Borough who at the time was voting against certain things because they had family on there. It wasn't a dependent, it wasn't no such thing. In that, the council person was charged with numerous ethics violations, and it was sustained for at least 2 of those. Do you have any input on that? Can you elaborate a little?
Well, I don't know I don't know that matter or that case. I can tell you that I spoke with Mr. DuPont, your regular borough attorney. We went through the scenario with him. He said he did not see a conflict under these circumstances, an impropriety or an appearance of impropriety, and that's as good as I can tell you.
Okay, well, what I'd ask, if you took a straw poll earlier, if people who may have a stake in this, if they would abstain from based on that outcome. If we need a second for you to research to give a better opinion, we could take a second or two.
No, I'm expressing to you Mr. DuPont's opinion. So he seemed quite confident that he was on solid legal ground in expressing that opinion.
Okay.
Mr.
Well-
Gumperk, if I may, Mayor, if I may ask Mr. Gumperk, you're the PBA president, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the straw poll was to see how many vacancies there were, how many officers are needed in the department. So
Okay.
just to give you a heads up what the straw
Okay.
poll was about.
So whatever action you're going to take here, it's based on 5 people, and we'll still, four,
No, 5.
5 openings.
5 openings.
Okay,
4
so the
votes.
poll had nothing to do with who was going to vote or who would be eligible to vote.
No.
No, it was about how many vacancies there are with regards to how many
Okay.
officers
All right,
are
so
needed in
then-
the department.
Sit back and we'll wait to see what the outcome is, I guess, right?
Are there any other questions or comments? Yes, young lady. If you'd state your name and your street, please.
My name is Julia Solkowski. I was here at a board meeting a couple weeks ago, and there was a lawyer that was here that was going to try and help me with the problem. I was living at 128 Washington Road back in 2002.
Mrs. Golkowski, this is I'm sorry that you came all the way down here. This is a special meeting, it's not a general meeting, but if you wait till after this is over, I'll try to help you.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Stanley?
I guess I'll stand up because some of the guys don't want to actually come up in public and speak, so I'll speak for them. Just 2 things. I'm not sure what that 5 means exactly.
They're going to hire, by declaring 5 vacancies, they will hire 5 police officers off the existing list.
Right, okay. Well, as a follow-on, just like I said, I'm only up here as the service officer, so one of the things we'll have to do is follow up with the veterans at the national and the state office. And as a protected group, as veterans, we have to ask for any kind of input from the federal office. Again, we're not trying to cause any trouble, but most of us, know what it's like to be in this position. So I hope everything was done above board. The other thing is on the ethics thing is I feel a little, having been a councilman for 2 terms, we never had to have a legal expert tell us what was ethical or not. Because on the 8 years I was here, we were just talking, a couple of us, many of us actually abstained for things like we went to high school with somebody lived in the neighborhood, things like that in the past were just for the obvious ethical, what would you call it, the way it looks to the public, we stepped down, so I'm not sure the legal aspect. I'm not a lawyer. Again, I hope you're doing the right thing. We're just here to protect our fellow veterans, make sure they got what's coming to them. Again, it's not a handout. I know some people think that, but it's not true. I even looked up a statistic just to give you, when you vote, I hope your conscience is clear. Most of the war is fought by the E3, E4 enlisted men. An infantry E4 or PFC who's fighting the war at the hardest level, with all of his benefits, he clears about $31,000 with combat pay and family allowances. So if you think people are making out as professional soldiers or basically making big bucks out there fighting a war, you're wrong. So I hope you keep that in mind and do the right thing.
Thank you, Stanley. Are there any other questions or comments? Yes, sir. Any other questions or comments? Eddie Streck?
Ed Streck, 58 Nickel Avenue, Sayreville. The 5 that are eligible to become policemen, are any of them veterans?
No.
Every time I enter the Borough Hall, I pass by that honor roll at the entrance. 1,450 veterans. Many of them came home and became police officers in Sayreville. They witnessed war. They witnessed stress. And it reminded me of police officers in Sayreville. They go to work every day, not knowing what's going to happen. Not knowing what's going to happen. And being a veteran, I'm sure would help them deal with the stresses that they have to deal with every day. Their families have to deal with this. And the experience of being a veteran would help them deal with some of the situations that they have to deal with. Now, is there another list that has veterans on it? I'm not familiar with the lists, or what you're...
Well, Eddie, the way civil service works is normally you would, once you do your hiring, you would return the unused list for an updated list. So it is the understanding that there are a number of veterans waiting to be put on a new generated list.
Mayor, if I may just refer over to Mr. Clark, our labor attorney, just for the civil service rules on if there's openings and so forth, if you can just expand on that so everyone knows and they're just not hearing one side of
We only have one list now. That's the current list. And it's set to expire either July 2nd or July 3rd. At that point, the new list would come into play. If this list had been disposed of, then there'd be no list to work from, and the governing body would have to wait until the new list was certified. So right now, this is the only list that the borough can work from. The veterans that may be on the new list, which I have not seen, I'm only assuming they're veterans from some of the comment from the public today, they will have preference on that new list.
Who would be, make the decision that the 5 that are eligible to become policemen actually are qualified to be policemen? Who would make that decision?
That would be based upon the list, the order of candidates on the list, and the borough would have discretion for the top 3 candidates as they go down. After that, then the department goes through a vetting process.
In our organization, it's always done through the police administration, and they make the recommendation to the council on who to hire.
So the police department would make a decision on which one of those 5 would be hired as a policeman.
That's the process that we've always followed.
Thank you very much.
So, Bob, I have a question. So everyone that's on the list today, we've hired veterans off the current list, and we've exhausted and went through every veteran that's on that list.
I have not seen the list, but I was told tonight that we've exhausted all the veterans that were on the list, yes.
But it's a possibility you may have to go to the second list if they deem possible that they...
Eddie, there's only one list.
I just asked a question about the
there's
current
only
list.
one list.
So we hired all and interviewed every veteran that's on the current list.
Okay, so
Right,
the
there's not-
veterans,
there's no-
the
hold on.
veterans are going to be set aside.
Correct.
No.
Very much.
How is that possible?
Are there any other questions or comments? Yes, Doug?
No, they're not.
Define set aside.
Just so we can have clarification, Mr. Clark, when you said there's only one list that we're working from, if it's a true statement to make, I believe right now there is currently if you would, a list. There are scores that are ready to be published at this point. If the governing body chooses to close the current list as early as tomorrow, they can recertify a list to include veterans, non-veterans, disabled veterans, minorities.
The people on the current list would be included.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah.
But they would get merged into a new list.
Correct.
There's only one list now, let's be clear on that.
Yes.
The other list, whether it happens, whether the state comes up with a list within a few days or a couple of months, you or I don't know what that's going to be. You're telling me, and I think the chief also shared with me, that all the scores are in. So they're going through a process that I don't know how long will take. If the governing body decides that there are vacancies in the department to fill, they have to work off of this list now because it's still the current list of eligibles.
But again, if the governing body chooses to dispose of that list, you can move to have a new list assigned.
If the governing body decides there are no vacancies, because besides the state law, you have your own ordinances that says where possible, which would assume that there's the funding necessary to pay for the people who are going to be hired, they're supposed to act within 45 days.
Right,
So
I
so
guess,
if we said that there's no vacancies right now, the number of police officers that are on, that we have right now, the current police officers, is the number that we have to work with.
Correct, unless the governing body changes it. It's all a product of the governing body.
okay.
Are there any other questions or comments? Stanley?
I understand what you're saying, and again, how did the number 5, I mean, is this an emergency? Did the police, or did the chief feel we need to hire 5? Or is that number, could it be lower?
By our ordinance, there are 3 vacancies, with 2 more coming up in June, July.
Well, that's my question there, is I can see if it was an emergency and the chief or whoever is responsible says we have to meet what we called in a military minimum manning, I would have no problem with that. But if we go beyond that, it gives me, again, the impression that we're trying to bypass the new list. In that case, again, I would, if minimum manning required 3, I don't see why we would go over 3 as an example, if 3 was the number, if that makes any sense to anybody. I think that might be an equitable solution to their problem. Again, I don't know what the minimum manning is, because I'm not the police chief or a senior officer in the police
Stanley,
department.
you and I agree on this issue. 3 was the number I proposed.
Well, I would rather hear from the chief if he can speak about it, because
Chief?
he's the commander of the police department.
Absolutely.
Again, I'm just offering, as somebody said, I'm looking for something that's equitable solution. I would support if it was an emergency and the commanding officer said we have to have 3, I would support that. But if we go beyond, it gives me the impression of trying to block spots. And again, I did a little research. Again, if you go on the Star Ledger website, there are several articles from this year where towns, it specifically said they blocked lists for to avoid hiring veterans. And again, I'm just, I got no beef in this. I have no relatives and nobody involved in this at all. I'm just looking out for the guys. So I will offer maybe that as a possible solution. Again, I'm going to leave it to the chief. He's responsible.
Chief, if you would, please.
We've had an exhaustive conversation in closed session. We've talked about our numbers of staffing over the years, and we've always felt very comfortable at the 89 level.
And what are we at now?
What are we operating at now?
86 currently.
And how many retirees do we know of before the end of the year?
Well, we're certain that there are 2 more, which would be June 1st and July 1st.
And then 1 in October.
That would be aging out. That's
So that would be 6 total vacancies throughout the year. And how many officers did you request in the beginning of the year?
We asked for a total of 6 throughout the entire 2017.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments? Being no, yes, sir.
Art Walzak, 238 Cat Street. You keep saying that there's only one list. The list that you're talking about now, that test was given in 2013, correct?
Dan? It's several years old.
Okay. In 2013, my son was with the 1-9 in Afghanistan, getting shot at, rolling over IEDs. Came home in one piece. Didn't get to take the civil service test because they delayed it 1 year. So this list that you're talking about is already 1 year beyond what it should be. You keep saying there's only one list. The list is ready to be coming out if you would just certify it. You could turn this list in, certify the new one. The academy doesn't start till August. So why do we have to hire off of this old list? You're going to hire them, and then when are they going to go to the academy?
Basically, the end of August, like August 29th.
So you're saying we're not bypassing veterans, but we're going to hire off the old list and bypass veterans that are on the new list, and what? They're going to sit around until
Well, we're going to pay
August.
them for several months. They're not certified to be police
But there's
officers.
nothing unethical with that.
You would have to ask for the 4 council people that are in favor of the 6. So,
You're looking at me. Would you like me to answer that?
Well, you're saying there's only one list that we have to work off of.
There absolutely
You
is.
have a list
Do you want
that
to?
is
Do you want to hear
certified.
my answer? There absolutely is only one list. There's another list that will be forthcoming at some time in the future. It does not exist now. If tomorrow morning we asked for a list, there's not a list they can give us except for the one that we have right now.
The list you have right now is only good because you didn't turn it back in. What I'm saying is, you could turn that list in, certify a list, and have people in time. They can't go to the academy till August anyway. So why are we so hot now to hire so that they sit around and can't go to the academy? Where is that helping anything here?
Mr. Walzak, you would need to ask the members of the governing body. Bob Clark is our labor attorney. He merely advises us, but it's the governing body that ultimately makes the decisions, and they made this decision tonight that about these vacancies.
Well, I don't know. You keep saying that we hire veterans, we take care of veterans, and here we are screwing veterans, and there's no other way to put it. And why?
Right, correct. Are there any other questions or comments? Any other questions or comments? With that, I'll ask for a motion to close the public portion.
Move the public portion be closed.
Second.
Roll call?
Councilperson Buchanan?
Yes.
Grillo?
Yes.
Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Limbo? Melendez?
Yes.
Novak?
Yes.
Is there a motion?
I move, as we discussed in closed session, that we acknowledge 5 vacancies currently in the police department.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Councilpersons Buchanan?
Yes.
Grillo?
Before I vote, just want to say, tonight, you can tell by the lateness of the hour, we had quite a robust discussion. But considering that the old list, which we're calling in the vernacular, has no veterans on it, that we're bypassing veterans, and that the chief's recommendation was not for 5 people off the old list, I will be voting no.
Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Limbo?
I'll be voting no, with the suggestion that we get further legal counsel as far as the ethics involved here. To me, there's certainly an appearance of impropriety.
Melendez?
Yes.
Novak?
Yes, I'd just like to say we started this year with a cert. We immediately, at a public meeting and at finance meetings, discussed how we needed to get more people into the academy. We had to hire them by July. That's what was said at a public meeting. We requested, in the finances, we actually requested 6 additional people. There is funding in the budget for that. That is the same, a similar thing happened just last year. We certified a list in July. We did not turn it back in, and we hired again off of it before the end of the cert. So to say that this has never happened before, we did it just last year. We hired Al Cox's son in November. And as far as the ethics, we recently took an ethics class before the last meeting, and it was specifically said, we went through case law, case after case after case after case. And my voting, and then I still requested an opinion of our attorney, was it ethical for me to vote on this? And I was told yes. The ethics on this, the case law, is staggering to say that as long as the person, there's no financial benefit for me, the person is not my dependent, that I can vote on it. Thank you.
Okay, with that, maybe something can be salvaged out of what went on tonight. Is there a motion to get a new certified list? Would somebody make that motion, and would somebody second it?
Before we do that, I would
Can't do that yet.
like to ask for our legal opinion on what we can and can't do with that request. He requested that we certify a new list.
Well,
What is the rule with,
Dispose of this one.
excuse me?
We have to dispose of the,
Okay.
right?
Typically, that's what you would do.
Bobby, if you just explain it.
Explain this question or
Question that
Terry's
the que-
question?
No, the question that Kennedy asked was requesting a motion to get a new list.
So what you would do is you have a current list, which is the only list, okay? And if you don't want to hire off of that list, then you wouldn't be voting for vacancies in the department. If you're voting for vacancies, that's the list you have to work off of.
Can we make a motion, or
for
can we not make a motion?
Make a motion to get a new list.
Correct.
But then you're not going to have, you're voting that there's no vacancies in the department.
Oh,
But we just voted for what we voted.
Which,
If there's vacancies, you're going to work off of the existing list because of your own ordinance.
all right. That being said, is there any other business? Does anyone in the public have anything to say? The vote is taken. I will certainly extend you the courtesy, particularly the veterans. Stanley?
I'm honestly very disappointed. In 4 weeks, we're going to be having a parade. We're going to honor our fallen. Many of you are going to walk up front and wave and tell us how much you think about us. I'm very let down. I think the option of hiring 3 would have probably satisfied us on behalf of the veterans. And again, I think the chief, you did say 3, right? You said you could have gone with 3? I think that was a reasonable compromise. One of the problems we have is no compromise. We could have solved this problem very easily tonight. Again, again, as my role as a service officer, we have to follow up in writing to the state VFW and the national and to the federal agencies that handle veterans. Because as a class, we're considered a separate class by federal law. I just think it was a mistake not to take a good compromise tonight. And again, on the ethics thing, most people don't have to take an ethics class to figure out there were a few gray areas, but relative is something most people step down in the past on even simple votes in the past, so I found it kind of strange. Again, I would have stepped down if it was a close relative of mine. But you can do whatever you want because it may be legal, but it's not right. Again, I wish you'd taken the 3 and satisfied everybody tonight. But again, it makes it seem even shadier to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Stanley. Mr. Walzog, did you want to speak, sir? Any other? Yes, sir.
Got to get to the mic, please.
Anthony, could you repeat it so we get it on the tape?
Anthony Donofrio, Lapa Court. I just want to say we get judged on everything we do, and there's a list for a reason. We want the top candidates. So now we're lower on the list where you have people with high scores and veterans. I would rather have those people fill the spots. I mean, it's a phone call away to certify the list, and then we get the cream of the crop. So, you want to hire down on the list for no reason, that's in your hands. That's it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Then with that, I'll ask for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
Thank you, everyone.